This week, the Office of the Legislative Auditor released a damning report finding state employees fabricating records to cover up mismanagement of money, tax money. It's another black eye for the State Department of Human Services, and Lou Raguse is covering it and sat down with the legislative auditor.
This was definitely the most egregious thing I have seen. Maybe in my whole time working at OLA.
After 27 years with the Office of the Legislative Auditor, a statement like that from Judy Randall means something. After past suspicions, she says her most recent audit proved state workers were fabricating documents to cover up mismanagement of taxpayer money.
So these documents should exist. They didn't. We asked for them. All of a sudden, they now exist. And in at least one case, it was created wholesale and backdated by 2 years to give the impression that it had always been there and been done on time.
The OLA audited the Behavioral Health Administration within the Department of Human Services, which issues grants, nearly $200 million of taxpayer money each year, to addiction and mental health service providers. But the audit found BHA was not making sure those providers were doing the work.
BHA didn't conduct the site visits. Our auditors went and conducted the site visits that BHA should have done, and we identified serious concerns that services weren't being provided.
One of the grants examined by OLA was $1.6 million issued to the Wellness Collaborative through Zion Baptist Church in North Minneapolis. According to the OLA report, BHA didn't have documentation to give auditors to show that the services were rendered. What's more, the audit says the grant manager directly profited by leaving BHA and months later providing consulting services to the Wellness Collaborative for the grant she managed, which Randall says is not illegal.
But I think it raises a bunch of ethical questions at the very least.
Representatives at Zion strongly dispute what BHA and DHS told the auditors. They tell KARE 11 DHS sought them out for the grant. They provided services which DHS workers witnessed. They gave DHS documentation, and they say now they believe they're being scapegoated. The former grant manager told KARE 11 any wrongdoing falls squarely on DHS.
Conduct a monitoring visit to make sure the services are actually being provided. These aren't rocket science types of things.
Randall says the audit found fewer than 1 in 5 DHS workers they surveyed felt adequately trained to scrutinize how the grant money is spent. And perhaps most frustrating, this was the second audit of the Behavioral Health Administration, and many of the problems found were repeat problems.
What is it like to see these problems, make these recommendations, and nothing is done to fix it?
It's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Governor Tim Walz's office says they're grateful for the auditor for her work and for identifying these serious issues. And Democratic Senator Melissa Wickland, who chairs the Health and Human Services Committee, says that it's clear that DHS has not taken actions to fix these problems as they had portrayed to the senator.
Okay, so it's the second failed audit, and that's what we're getting from Democratic leadership. Is there going to be accountability this time?
Well,
You know what's interesting about Tim Walz? Why do you think Kamala Harris chose Tim Walz? Nobody knew who he was before.
Why? That is interesting.
The first day he's chosen, he raises the most amount of money than any other candidate in history. I think it's over $35 million he raised for the campaign within just a day of being selected to become the vice president. And now we know all this fraud's happening. How did Tim Walz, he used to be a high school football coach, he's not even from Minnesota, he's from Nebraska. How is he able to raise the most amount of money?
That's great. Do you think the Somalians were funding it?
100%. It had to be some sort of...
Want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Hey. Why this beat so cold?
We will make America proud again. When you try to we will make America wealthy again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Tim Walz has always been and is a national security risk. I was a knucklehead at times. Well, boy, we got some more bombshell news updates. It just gets worse and worse and worse. Everything new that comes out, any new update, any breaking news, any just in news, it's going to get worse and worse and worse for this clown in the state of Minnesota. I told y'all this. I've been saying it for so long, you know. And here we are. Well, God bless them beautiful patriots around the world. I hope everybody is blessed, well, and healthy, that you're having a great start to the new year of 2026. And just a reminder right here.
He taught in China from 89 to 90. He visited the country 30 times. He got married on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. He honeymooned in China. And to your point, he promoted Chinese communism as a teacher to his American students. So I think what this does, Governor, is it begs the question, is Tim Walz a national security risk?
Absolutely. I'm 100% convinced he's a national security risk. This man wants America to grow up and be more like China, which is the exact opposite of what our leaders should be doing. I have spent all of my time fighting China, and for 30 years I've been working in policy on protecting our food supply, and we've seen China not only manipulate our currency, steal our IP, treat us unfairly in trade agreements, they've also spied on us. They've come in and they're taking and buying our land. I have banned them purchasing land and doing state contracts in South Dakota. The rest of the country needs to realize and wake up that we do not want a leader like Tim Walz and Kamala Harris in the White House because of how they would undermine our national security. It's a big concern, and I hope we start talking about it a little bit more, that you have to have people in the White House that truly want to protect us, protect our republic, and fight socialism, fight Marxism, fight communism. That's not Tim Walz.
Y'all remember that. Constitutional Republic. But now, Tim Walz just got caught faking financial records and state audit, and we just played you the clip in the beginning of today's show. You just can't make this up, man. You just can't, you know.
Imagine this. Federal prosecutors estimate that up to $9 billion meant for kids, the disabled, the poor, was stolen in one state alone.
Forget letting that bastard resign. Screw resignation to escape his actions. Arrest him now. I'm reading through the comments, y'all. Put your hands behind your back. They ought to walk that bastard out right now. And y'all know that's what I've been advocating for. That is what I've been advocating for, demanding that we ought to see the governor walked out live on television in handcuffs.
$9 billion. Auditors then catch government employees fabricating and backdating documents to hide the mess. And the governor of that state is now being told that either he resigns or he's leaving office in handcuffs. This isn't a movie plot. This is Minnesota. And the Tim Walz scandal is spiraling into something that could reshape the entire debate over welfare, immigration, and accountability in blue state America for generations to come. Breaking news and analysis. Meet Minnesota's own legislative auditor, Judy Randall. She's not a politician. She's not a pundit. She's a career numbers and paperwork person with nearly 30 years in the office of the legislative auditor. And yet, despite those years of experience, nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared her for what she was about to encounter. She called it, quote, the most egregious case of corruption and fraud she's ever seen. Her team dug into the Behavioral Health Administration at Minnesota's Department of Human Services, the division that hands out roughly $200 million a year in grants for mental health and addiction treatment. And what she found wasn't just sloppiness. It was a systemic effort to rewrite history on paper. Auditors asked for routine oversight documents, things like proof of site visits, monitoring, proof that services were actually delivered, just basic stuff. At first, astonishingly, the DHS said, we don't have those files. Those files don't exist. And then once auditors pressed them saying, yes, you do, because legally they have to exist, suddenly documents several weeks later appeared.
They started appearing, huh?
And at least one was created from scratch and backdated by 2 years to make it look like it had always been there.
A disgrace.
And they found that that was the pattern. They fabricated the documentation. The auditor, Judy Randall, she told lawmakers that multiple employees in the Behavioral Health Administration created or backdated documents after the audit began across the entire grant oversight process. She called it a systemic effort to deceive. It wasn't simply forgetting to upload a PDF. These are officials knowingly falsifying the record to make it look like oversight happened when in fact it did not, and intentionally did not. And the paper trail gets worse. One grantee tied to a North Minneapolis church, the Wellness Collaborative through Zion Baptist, received a $1.6 million grant. Auditors found that DHS had no documentation whatsoever to prove that the services taxpayers paid for were ever delivered, even as church representatives insist they did the work and are now being scapegoated. In another case highlighted to Congress, a grantee was paid nearly $680,000 for a single month of work. Think about that, $680,000 for a single month, and yet couldn't produce a single invoice or participant data. Oh, and you'll love this. The grant agreement totaled about $1.6 million, and the state employee who approved the money left the DHS within days. And then guess where that former state employee went to work? They went to work for that very same grantee. Talking about a revolving door. So we've actually caught at least one instance where a DHS worker approved $1 million grant without any justification, then quit his or her DHS job and went on to work for the very organization that this now former DHS worker gave over $1 million to. I mean, the corruption is so patently blatant, it defies belief. But this is Minnesota. This is Tim Walz's Minnesota. This is the fraud that we're finding wasn't merely incidental. It wasn't peripheral. It was woven in and throughout the entire state and local government system. Tim Walz is the fraud. Mayor Jacob Fry is the fraud. Ilhan Omar is the fraud. On top of that, auditors found DHS failed to conduct required site visits. You know, like the ones that independent journalist Nick Shirley recently did when he found this.
Here at Future Leaders Early Learning Center, this building received over $3 million. Hello, how are you? I would like to see if I could bring little Joey, my son little Joey here. Is there paperwork or can I check out the daycare? No? Why can't I check out the daycare? Okay, but if I can't get paperwork or anything to submit my son little Joey to come in here to daycare? We'd really like to put Joey in this daycare. We've heard great things. No, I would like your business card actually.
We are the media, man. This is an absolute disgrace, and y'all know we've showed this on the show many times. We did a whole many coverages of this in particular, you know, and again, they didn't want this out there, but it's out there, and it's gotten to a point where the Somalis in this community, the people in this community, have put even a bounty on Nick Shirley's head, you know. And I want to send my love and just prayers to all to people on the ground, man, to the Nick Shirleys out there, you know, because it's getting. Just watch in 2026, man, and we've already seen more journalists are hitting the ground running right now, you know, in these communities, showing what's actually going on with these daycares and many other things, and not just in the state of Minnesota, but all over. It's a lot of fraud everywhere, you know. And I want to just send my prayers for you guys' safety, you know, and for Nick Shirley's safety. Again, they put a bounty on his head, y'all. He gets threats every single day. We get threats. You know, I've gotten threats in my emails, DMs. Y'all know. But hey, this is what we know what comes with it, man. You know? And hey, here we are. But you just can't make this up, man. This is a disgrace. This heifer didn't know what was going on. And they're receiving a check. So-called daycare. Ain't no kids inside. But everybody receiving a check, huh? Ooh, them taxpayers is hotter than fish grease. I am hotter than fish grease myself.
You talk to your manager.
Okay, can I speak with somebody? Where are the children at? Are there children here today?
No.
No children?
Yes.
Why are there no children?
Two of Mexico.
Would my son, little Joey, have friends to play with here?
No.
No.
Yes.
No friends for little Joey?
Yes. Sorry.
Dang it. Well, have a great rest of your day.
So it shouldn't surprise you that when the auditors themselves went out to conduct the site visits, they too discovered what they called, quote, serious concerns that services were not being provided at all. In fact, they found that fewer than 1 in 5 surveyed DHS workers even felt trained to properly scrutinize how grant money was being spent. The DHS audit uncovered nothing short of mass corruption, fraud, and incompetence. Oh, and by the way, did I mention, to add insult to injury, this was already the second audit of that same division. The previous audit caught many of the same failures, so these were repeat problems that had not been fixed despite earlier warnings. Obviously, at some point, incompetence stops being a believable excuse. Now, zoom out. While Minnesota's bureaucracy was fabricating paperwork after the fact, federal investigators were uncovering what they say could be the largest welfare and Medicaid fraud crisis in modern U.S. history. An estimated $9 billion stolen through schemes tied to child care, autism services, housing, Medicaid programs. The Feeding Our Future scandal alone, the one that centered on that Somali restaurant that claimed it was feeding hungry kids. I think they're the ones who, where Ilhan Omar did her celebration banquet after her 2018 congressional victory. That scandal alone involved over $250 million stolen from taxpayers. 78 defendants have been charged. Almost all of them, over 90%, are of Somali descent. Federal prosecutors in the House Oversight Committee now say that that scandal was just the tip of the iceberg. One piece of a much broader web of fraud that pervades Minnesota's social services system. And one man, the governor, has been overseeing it all for years. And now his reckoning is at hand. And speaking of a reckoning, you know, the same nefarious, right? The two aren't mutually exclusive. Nevertheless, as we all know, Walz did drop out of the race for governor. He won't be seeking another term in office. So this scandal clearly has legs. It's already claimed at least partially a victim. It's already obliterated his political future, at least at a national level. But we're more and more learning about Walz's own involvement in this culture of corruption at the highest level of Minnesota politics. We're now finding out that whistleblowers, we're talking hundreds of social workers and government employees, raised alarms about this fraud years ago, but they were suppressed. Those concerns were not just ignored, they were openly and overtly opposed by Tim Walz himself. In fact, there were reports that he and his administration were blatantly intimidating and threatening these whistleblowers with retaliation if they went public. So it looks like his dropping out of the gubernatorial race is just the first of the consequences that Walz will be inevitably facing. In the meantime, the Trump administration is escalating. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins has frozen roughly $130 million in USDA funding to Minnesota and Minneapolis over massive fraud and lack of accountability. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has announced a massive IRS audit of financial institutions that facilitated the laundering of Minnesota funds. Vice President J.D. Vance announced a new Assistant Attorney General position with nationwide jurisdiction over fraud, saying its work will start in Minnesota and then expand across the country. Homeland Security agents and a multi-agency task force are already, of course, on the ground in Minneapolis, and this is all just the prelude. Make no mistake, these are just the opening credits to the movie. Representative Comer has called Walz and Ellison to testify under oath in a congressional hearing where they'll have to answer on camera whether they were clueless or complicit or even a bit of both while billions vanished and state workers were allegedly forging the records. Virtually every single department of the federal government is now involved in this. The DOJ, the Agriculture Department because of the food programs, the Department of Education, or at least what's left of it, because of the learning programs, or better, the leering programs. Health and Human Services, the Treasury Department, of course, ICE and Homeland Security, since so much of the fraud was being perpetrated by Somali nationals. The SEC, because of interstate activity. Virtually every single federal department is swooping down on this scandal and has a vested interest in prosecuting and punishing all those involved. You've been wanting to see handcuffs? Well, with this latest scandal, you may indeed be getting your wish.
We all want to see handcuffs. You got to put your hands behind your back. No other way around it, man. Damn.